Every day, your City of Tempe staff goes above and beyond to make sure our community gets the best possible services and the most for our tax dollars. But how good is good? How do you measure it? And how do we know what we really need to make progress on some of our most pressing issues? To guide us, we developed a series of goals designed to help us improve our community based on our Tempe City Council's 5 strategic priorities. Reaching for excellence, we are comparing ourselves against the rest of the nation as well as ourselves. Some of our goals will help save lives. Some of them will help us save money. All of them will help us make Tempe a better place. Tempe Accelerates is an opportunity for you to get involved. Hear what city staff and community partners are doing to reach our goals. Your role? You are a vital part of our community. Share your ideas and help us craft better solutions. Ask questions. Be part of the conversation either in person or online. Check tempe.gov/Tempe Accelerates for dates and times of our next programs and collaborate with us at Tempe City Hall. Today, we will hyper-focus on 2 performance measures. Each presenting team will have 10 minutes to share data, strategies, and progress on a performance measure. Then, you will have about 10 minutes to ask questions or offer suggestions and ideas. On the back of your agenda, we have resource questions to help you participate in the conversation. Also included with your agenda is a quick survey with space you can use to include any ideas or suggestions you might have about today's topics. Thank you for participating. Now, let's accelerate.
Welcome to another exciting edition of Tempe Accelerates. For those of you in the audience here or watching on Tempe Channel 11 or watching via the internet or our worldwide satellite feed, just kidding. Isaac was really nervous about the size of the audience. Thank you for coming today. As you know, in Tempe Accelerates, we take a deeper dive into some of our performance measures. We look at 2 performance measures during each episode, and today, Isaac and Sean will be exploring 2 very exciting performance measures. One is right-of-way landscaping, another is graffiti removal. So we're going to take a deeper dive. They'll tell you about how this was established as a performance measure, how they've made progress toward it, and what they're doing now in terms of trying to achieve that performance measure. And then they're going to ask you for input on how you can help them accelerate and advance their efforts to reach this performance measure. So go ahead and introduce yourself, gentlemen, and take it away.
Thank you, Ken. Isaac Shavir, Transportation Maintenance Manager.
Sean Thompson, right-of-way landscape, graffiti supervisor.
So as Ken said this afternoon, first and foremost, again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us. This afternoon, we're going to talk about the quality of life council strategic priority. And as Ken said again, it's a little bit discussion on quality of landscape maintenance. So what is our performance measure? Our performance measure is 3.23, and that is to achieve ratings of very satisfied or satisfied with the quality of landscape maintenance along streets, sidewalks that are greater than or equal to the top 10% of the national benchmark cities as measured in the community survey. So in 2000, or last year, the last presentation that we did, we were already exceeding the 10%, or above the 10%. We were already exceeding the average. So we added the 10% so that we're being able to be more competitive with other municipalities around the nation.
So why does this performance measure matter? So the first thing we have to realize, how much landscape do we take care of? So out in the right-of-ways, we take care of 7.5 million square feet of landscape, about 486 locations, ranging from 2,000 square feet to up to 300,000 square feet. So that roughly comes out to about 35% of the right-of-ways is maintained by the city. An additional 65% is maintained by commercial properties or residential properties. So why is this so important? Well, we want a beautiful city. It beautifies the city with a nice landscape that's maintained and maintained well. And there's been studies that show that nice landscape maintained well, it reduces in crime. Also, plants and trees. We all know that trees provide oxygen. Plants do also. And they also act as a big air filter and cleans the air that we have. And the shade canopy. I mean, we all live in Arizona. In the summertime, what do we look for? A shady tree. It reduces our heat island. It also increases property values, and this one particular performance measure connects with several other performance measures in the city, which is our tree canopy, a 20-minute city, sustainability, and water conservation. So what is the goal? Well, in Sean's world, I would like to have everything revitalized by 2030. That's a pretty aggressive way of getting our landscape done, but that will enhance it for our residents and visitors coming to the city of Tempe. We also want to improve our survey rating on our quality of landscape. And Isaac will kind of show some of the new techniques we're kind of looking to improve those things. So what is our target? Well, we live in Arizona, and we know that we have to make sure that we use our water wisely. So we want to make sure that we are planting trees are drought tolerant, and same with plants. And look at other techniques of possibly water harvesting some water that we can in our right-of-way landscape. And since this is Tempe, we want to be unique. We want to be a very stylish way of our landscape being placed out there. Through the community survey, the national average is 54%. And then one of the charts here in the blue there, you can see through the community survey from 2007 to hopefully in 2041, we'll be at 80%, but it fluctuates. And the last community survey was at 59%. Unfortunately, that just is not good enough for in Sean's world or in the council's world.
So again, 2017, we presented in the Tempe Accelerates, and we had a long way to go in terms of creating our data, putting together our asset inventory. And so I'm pleased to show that now we have a GIS mapping system, thanks to our GIS team, that basically has our inventory in our system, has the ability for us to understand and track what assets are out there that relate to our landscape and how we move forward in making sure that our landscape is improving. The other piece that goes with that in terms of baseline data is the assessment that we're doing on an annual basis. We've come a long way again from 2017 when we were working with data from 2010. Now on an annual basis, Sean goes through and he goes through and rates on a 1 to 5 scale what each one of those geographic areas is scaled as. I think if some of you remember, were at the presentation the last time, Andrew called it the LQI, similar to the Pavement Quality Index. It's the Landscape Quality Index. So those are the numbers that Sean puts together to make sure that there's scales and there's numbers and data attached to each one of those geographic areas of landscape. Lastly is the maintenance and operating budget, or the operating and capital improvement budget numbers that come along with maintaining the 7.5 million square feet of landscape. As you could see on the graph on your screen there, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a hatched area which I call the funding gap. The light blue is historical data that has our CIP as well as our operating expenditures. And the green, light green on the right-hand side is the proposed future 5-year CIP and operating. And of course, in between is those lines in that hatched area and that red line, I call it the funding gap. And that funding gap is really about kind of what Sean has talked about, and making sure that we have sufficient maintenance funding to be able to keep up with our capital improvement projects. Because when you go in and you revitalize something, obviously you need to make sure that your continued efforts of maintaining it is there, and so the funding needs to be there. So we want to make sure that the maintenance gap is equal to the CIP and that there's sufficient funding to be able to do that. Some additional baseline data that we've used is our community satisfaction survey. As you can see here in 2018, the satisfaction survey provided us with some data that allowed us to make some data-driven decisions by saying, okay, well, where do we target our efforts, or where do we look at for opportunities of moving the needle forward? As you can see in 18, there's a lot of red and pinkish. It's hard to tell on the screen, but trust me, it's red. And then you look at 2019, and the red has reduced. Of course, the red means they're dissatisfied, The green is they're very satisfied, and the yellow tannish brown is neutral. So our opportunity is in 2019, and our strategy is to be able to, which I'll get into a little bit more, but our strategy is to be able to focus on those neutral areas to be able to turn those areas green. So here's the GIS system I was referring to earlier that we've had the opportunity to, in the last year and a half, to be able to collect data, collect the necessary information that Sean needs on a yearly basis to be able to rate our assets. On the left-hand side, there's the legend that shows trees, his clocks, timers, etc., in order to maintain his landscape. In the light blue is the areas that we maintain, which are part of the 7.5 million square feet. Anything outside of that is the responsibility of the adjacent property owners, that be the residents or the commercial property owners. So strategies. We will continue to work diligently to focus on collecting additional data and to communicate that data to our, not only our staff, but also our constituents. Collecting data just to collect data isn't good governance. The ability for us to collect data and make good government, data-driven decisions is the key to success. At the same time we're collecting data, we want to make sure that we're transparent with the data. So we've been able to work with, again, Stephanie's group, thank you, to be able to establish open data portals and dashboards so that the community has the opportunity to look through those dashboards. The mapping survey results, those are key. I've talked about that a little bit, and making sure that we're taking that data on a year-to-year basis and making those decisions. Continue to reach out to focus groups to make sure that when we survey, we're communicating to the residents that we've done such improvements, therefore they understand what they're rating on, or when they take the survey, they understand what, what what boxes they're filling out. The planning and prioritization is also key strategy to making sure that we're moving forward. Continue to develop collaboration efforts and cross-cutting opportunities with our code compliance group. It fits well with their performance measures as well, and that is to be able to educate the community and seek volunteer compliance. At the same time, create that assistance and enforcement from that community, so that when Sean is doing a capital improvement in a specific geographic area, we can partner together and make sure that we can complete that whole circle in that area and have that right-of-way landscape improved and looked a lot better. Last piece on this is the 5-year asset management and revitalization plan acceleration model. So we've created this model so that gives us an idea of what we're looking at in 30 years, as you can see in the green. That's the existing capital and operating expenditures the way it is today. It would take us 39, 40 years to be able to get to the end and have everything revitalized. The acceleration model in blue is Sean's world, and that is to be able to have our entire right-of-way landscaping, the 7.5 million square feet, revitalized in 10 years.
So our challenges. So Isaac mentioned our assessment. Let me just tell you some key factors when I do my assessment. There's 5 things I look at when I do an assessment of our right-of-ways. Number 1, irrigation. Is it working? Are we getting the same amount of pressure at the beginning of the line to the second at the end of the line? What is our tree canopy out there? Is there trees? What's the health of the trees? Are the trees in the right location for providing what we want? Thirdly, what is the plant material out there? What's the age of the plant material? Is it an issue of possibly past its expiration rate and that quality? What is our ground cover out there? Is it DG? Is it mulch? Or what's the condition in that? And then overall, what does it look like? I mean, those are 5 key elements. And so when I go and do my evaluation, I'll go in and I have those things drop down and we can change the evaluation on everything. So I mentioned age of the irrigation. The irrigation lifespan is about 25 years. So majority of our landscape that's still existing out there is getting close to that point. So that's a challenge for us to address these issues in our right-of-way, because the landscape might look mature and beautiful and healthy, but that aging irrigation is becoming a problem. So we may have to go out there and address it as soon as possible. Storm damage affects me and many other groups throughout the city, parks and stuff like that. As supervisors and managers, we kind of earmark a certain amount of money each year. We would like to projects and stuff like that. But living in Arizona, we have these wonderful things called haboobs, or monsoons, starting in July to like mid-September, which really affects our budgets. They come through, they do a lot of damage, we have a lot of trees down, and it costs a lot of money. So maybe looking into the future of setting up a general storm damage fund for several different areas, so it doesn't really affect our current budgets as we move forward. Isaac kind of touched on it. I'll kind of just briefly go over the CIP to maintenance and make sure that we're all kind of clear on that. I look at CIP as instant gratification. That's where we get a tree, we put it in the ground, and it's beautiful. And I look at maintenance, that's longevity. We have to make sure that these align with each other as we move forward, and especially in the right-of-ways, that we are able to maintain the infrastructure that we're putting in and the infrastructure we already still have. And one more thing is I want to bring up towards the community survey is perception and reality. Even though if we live in Sean's world and I go out and we redo that whole landscape, you got to remember when we do the survey, there's still another 65% out there that is commercial and residential. It may not really affect it. And the reality of it, 10 years from now, I'm retired, I'm happy, I got everything done, but unfortunately, this is a living infrastructure. It's never done. We'll always have to keep on refreshing our landscape, putting new plants in, but if we're aggressive right now, it won't be as much as we move forward as we're due diligence. And at that, thank you very much for listening to our presentation. And at this time, we would like to hear your thoughts, your ideas, or suggestions.
Before we get to the questions, I just want to reiterate what Sean just said. So we only own 60 or 35% of the landscaped areas in the city, and yet they have the strength to go out and say we're going to have a performance measure, like many of our performance measures, based on public perception, which means they have to have cooperation. They don't have complete control of this. If Sean were to plant every tree and fix every irrigation system he wanted, there's still 65% of the landscape out there that the public is going to drive by and think is ours, and they're going to assess our surveys accordingly. So we need cooperation, and I see Mr. Tamulevich. Jeff is here because you work hand in hand with these folks. Jeff's out there making sure the other 65% is kept up. So this is truly a team effort, and I don't know how you aren't up here with them, because clearly you contribute to this, but these gentlemen are taking on this very difficult measure, knowing that it isn't completely within your control and that you have to establish those partnerships. So I appreciate all that. So any advice you have for them or questions? Don't make me single you out.
Because of this issue,
Let's get the microphone. Thank you.
I think one of the things that the two of you do really well is the way that you interact with communities around right-of-way. And, you know, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the perceptions changes you see when you do change right-of-ways in people's neighborhoods, and what that on a customer by customer basis looks like in terms of changing the perception of how we're treating our right-of-ways?
Well, it's actually been a very, very good experience for me. I really never realized how involved our residents are in about our landscape and on our right-of-ways. I enjoy it. I love meeting out with our residents, and there is opinion. I've come to the conclusion of this. There's 3 topics I will not discuss it with people: religion, politics, our landscape. Because there is a lot of different opinions of what is an attractive landscape and what is not. But dealing with residents, because sometimes you have one resident that wants it this way, one wants it that way, and finding a compromise I find is wonderful, and I found it engaging. I always give out my cell number because I love when residents are engaged. That means that keeps me more engaged to taking care of the landscape.
Other questions or suggestions for them?
Thank you again for your presentation. What are some of your strategies that we can collectively as a city do for the public outreach because of that 65% factor, knowing what's city property, what's not city property?
Well, one of them I'm stealing from you because you had one of the most brilliant ideas. As Waddell brought up in a meeting while we're preparing for this about notifying the residents, because not all residents are visitors to the city of Tempe, know that this is a city property. It's very difficult to understand what is an HOA, what is city property, what's commercial property, what's a residential property. But on a barricade, while we're doing our work, this is a function of the city of Tempe. We're redeveloping the areas.
Yeah, it's a good question, Wydell. The other opportunities, I think, is is the reason why we're here and Tempe Accelerates is the opportunity for us to collaborate together. Ken, you mentioned the opportunity for us to partner with code compliance. That is certainly something that we can work together and figure out how do we communicate our efforts together, both not only from a revitalization standpoint, but also from a PIO standpoint and communication effort. So yeah, we would continue to work those and collaborate with our partners. And if there's any other opportunities that we're not thinking of that you guys, as you heard this presentation, that we can work with, we'd love to hear it at this point.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to the next presentation, but they're going to stay up here for that. So if you think any questions on this one before the next one, we can ask them all together. But let's give them a round of applause for this one. And we'll move on to graffiti removal.
So bear with us if we start talking about landscape again. You probably know why, because we're getting these two presentations together at the same time. So again, this graffiti abatement performance measure also falls under the council's strategic priority of quality of life. Before I get into this presentation, though, I do want to take a moment to make sure that we're all understanding the same language as we go through this presentation. And that is 4 definitions that I want to talk about briefly. The first one is graffiti. Well, what is graffiti? In a lot of people's different minds, it means different. So just so we're all on the same page, graffiti is the writing or drawing, scribbled, scratched, or sprayed illicitly on a wall or other surfaces, such as public or private, whether it's wanted or unwanted. It's graffiti if it's in public spaces. Abatement. What is abatement? Abatement is to simply remove the graffiti. Proactive measures are measures that we've implemented in 2015 that allows us to go through the city geographically and paint not only secondary graffiti, but any graffiti that we see on arterials or any areas that are visible to the motoring public. Lastly is the reactive measures, and those are the measures that basically come from either 311, customers, the community, or our staff. So our performance measure is 3.22, and that is to achieve less than 1 occurrence of graffiti on average per 4 miles by Tempe's annual graffiti audit.
Well, let me ask everybody a question real quick. When you came into Tempe, how many people saw some graffiti? Well, that's pretty good, isn't it?
Is that a mic drop? We're done.
Well, okay, no. Let's get serious here. Graffiti is a crime. It is violating somebody's property. It is costing revenue for someone or for the city. I just did one that was about 60 incidents. We did the total. It cost the city about $9,000 for us to go out there and abate or remove the graffiti. So it is a crime. It is something that costs. And my 2 great graffiti techs are here right now, and each of them do more than 60 incidents a day. So it kind of give you a general idea. So why does this matter? Well, we want the city to look attractive. We want to look beautiful. We don't want, graffiti all over our walls or any of our assets, just like our houses. Well, in those areas, in those neighborhoods, that increases the value of the homes. And the longevity of our assets, our property, our things that we own, our signs, our streets. We have to use certain type of equipment and certain type of chemicals and stuff like that would diminish the quality of our assets. And also, it reduces crime when we deliver so quickly and remove the graffiti.
So what is our goal? Our goal is very simply put, and that is to reduce the number of graffiti incidents within the city of Tempe. You guys, everybody that came here today is very fortunate that they're going to be able to watch the graffiti management viewer live, so we'll be able to go through that at the end of the presentation, then we'll cover the questions. And that graffiti management viewer has given us the opportunity to not only track our hotspots, but proactively and reactively abate any graffiti incidents throughout the city of Tempe. Late 2015, as you could see in the performance annual graffiti audit on the graph, that is when we introduced the graffiti management viewer. And as you could see, there was a significant drop in the graffiti tags that were happening. In 2013, when we started the surveys, we were at 15 per 4-mile span. Now we're at 1.30, so that's a significant drop, and our goal is to get it under that 1. Proactive is about 80%. I talked a little bit about the proactive. The majority of what those two gentlemen do in the field is what has made this a success, and that is to be able to make sure that we're covering the entire city. We're painting a blank slate, if you will, throughout the city of Tempe, so you're not seeing any graffiti and you're not seeing any secondary graffiti as well. This audit allows us also to keep pace of where we're at, where we've been, and we'll continue to work hard to make sure that we're under that 1 with the ability for us to continue to achieve that goal.
So why is this goal important? Well, graffiti affects us socially, environmentally, and financially, which kind of moves up in the sums. We want people to feel comfortable and safe while they're in the city of Tempe. So this performance measure kind of meets up with a couple of the PD have done. Performance measure 1.05, feeling safe in your neighborhood. And I'll show you performance number 1.23, feeling safe inside the park. So what is the goal of our graffiti abatement crew? Well, we want to take care of our assets. We want to make sure that we're collecting data, and we're making sure we're taking care of our assets that are out there in the right-of-way from one end of the city to the other end of the city, and inside our parks and everywhere, wherever the city property is. We want to be reliable. You're going to keep on hearing this number all day, within 24 to 48 hours. We want to make sure, and we are normally way before those signs, but those are our guidelines. We want to be within there within 24 to 48 hours. And our service quality. Well, I have a high standard, and I know these guys have some high standards. We just don't want to go over and just take care of that little thing on the wall like this. We're going to do the whole wall. We want to make sure that that graffiti never existed. So that was reported. You can never tell that graffiti was ever there. And Isaac kind of touched on that secondary and graffiti. So basically what it is in the past, you can go through other cities and you'll go through and you see these blotches and patches and stuff like that. Well, we want to clear that up. We want to make sure that it's all one consistent color, that it doesn't look like different. To me, that looks like just another graffiti, if there's this blotch, even though it was covered up. So we're moving really directly forward in that.
So what's some of the baseline data that we've gathered? That yearly audit that I talked about earlier in 2013 has given us the opportunity to really look at where we've been, and not only where we've been, but where we plan on going in terms of reaching that goal. We're pushing ourselves really to the next level. If you look at the number on the bottom right hand of that chart, we've been at 91% reduction in graffiti since 2013. We're almost at 100%. So you ask yourself, well, why continue? Because we want to make sure that our Tempe is the Tempe that's different than any other city, that has the ability to make data-driven decisions based on the data that we collect, not only through our surveys, but also through our GIS systems. So we want to continue to work on that 91.40%. So again, I want to give a big applause for taking ownership of the program, and those two gentlemen have done that. So thank you, guys. What are some of the strategies that we have had and we continue to work hard on, and that is the GIS map view system that you will see very shortly. That system allows us to track real time, and I won't elaborate on it since we're going to go through it, but it allows us to be able to collect the data and show the graffiti as abatement as it's happening. Sean talked a little bit about the data sharing with PD. We've been able to utilize it not only from a standpoint of catching individuals, but at the same time prosecution standpoint, and there's data in there that the PD would like to see in terms of amount of damage or other information that they may use. The 48 hours is, again, we talk about that, and the comparison to other valleys, that's the number that they use. Well, we're different again, and we like to be different, and the ability for us to be different is how we're successful, and that is by being able to capture our data, being able to track our data. And another strategy is to partner again with code compliance, because a lot of the areas that are graffitied are on private property. So we seek partnership from our code compliance group to be able to help us there. And then continue to expand our volunteer opportunities. The picture there is Devils in Disguise. That's one large volunteer group that helps us abate graffiti and clean up the city of Tempe. The last piece here, which is equally as important, is the ability for us to push the envelope, and that is to be able to get below that 1.30. You think about it, and we've done, for the most part, everything we can, but yet there's always something else, and that something else is the ability for us to collaborate with ASU's Cloud Innovation Center, sponsored by Amazon and the ASU School of Smart Cities. That has given us the ability to work with and partner with our solid waste folks and have the ability to take advantage of the artificial intelligence, not only to capture our surveys as we talked about earlier, but at the same time have the ability to identify the graffiti while it's happening, but in the instance, so that when our staff is out there, they immediately get a call to specific area and address it. So again, we're working closely with them to complete the partnership and allow us to be able to take advantage of that artificial intelligence.
So our challenges, well, I've already mentioned our staffing. We have two. We have one full-time regular employee, and we have one full-time temporary employee. What the issue is with that full-time temporary employee, I think in the last 4 years, we've gone to 3 people in that position. There's a lot of training that needs to happen for us to make this magic happen in our right-of-ways for graffiti. There's a lot of training to collect the data, realize what is a commercial property, what's a residential property, what's a city asset, what is agreements do we have with HOAs, how to get around City of Tempe. We're unique. So there's a lot of information. So it takes about 9 months to a year to get somebody fully up to speed to run their own route. Other challenges we have is one that I am personally too, that I really agree that this is one thing that we're moving forward in with our area. It's not well known, is we want to get it more out there. And basically, when graffiti happens, you're a victim. Everybody's a victim. So we want to reach out to our residents that are adjacent to our arterial road, that we're willing to help you. We just need you to be the owner of the house. We need you to sign a waiver, and we'll help you out and get that graffiti taken care of for you, adjacent from the area. And then the last thing I'm just kind of touch on, because Isaac will go a little bit more in depth with that, is when we made up this performance measure, it's very hard to do a measure or a performance with any other city, because no other city does what we do. Only thing they have is, well, we'll respond within 24 to 48 hours. So Isaac can get a little bit more into that, and as he's getting set up, Phil and Diego, would you please stand? And you guys have done an excellent job. And I would thank both of you, but I really like to thank Phil, because he really kind of spearheaded this in this direction working with Stephanie and Seth with their wonderful job helping us get this all set up.
So Isaac's setting up to give you a presentation of the database and the, what are you calling it, a portal? What do you call it?
Graffiti Incident Management Bureau.
Yeah, that. So he's going to give us a presentation, but I just want to say that, you know, it would have been really easy for them to set up this performance measure and just respond in time. So graffiti, you go over and over to the same places and paint over and scrape and clean all of those areas. But by collecting the data, I know that you've had a good relationship with the police, and they're actually catching some of the people who are doing this, which prevents it from recurring. So I think the data has really helped you in that way. So I really appreciate you taking that stance. So Isaac?
So here's the Graffiti Incident Management Viewer we've been talking about that has allowed us to be able to push the envelope and allow us to get to that 1.30 incidents per 4-mile stretch. Some of the information that you see on here, I wrote notes because it obviously we're live and there's some information in here that's explicit. So I'll click through some of this stuff just to show you. But most of those dots that you see in the reddish, those are all the abatements that have happened since 2013. So the ability for us to be able to query the information, search incidents, waivers, we can query any type of data on the incidents, that be it by date. We can select a specific location. Say, for example, we want all the graffiti incidents that were on bridges. We click bridges and we apply. I think this might be a little slow, so bear with us a little bit. So all the highlighted areas are basically incidents that our staff has responded to. It gives us the information of the size of the graffiti in square feet. It gives us where it took place, location-wise, property type, whether it's the city or on a different piece of structure, whether it's public or private. It's proactive that we talked about, or reactive, how we got the call. The number of counts, because you could have 10 counts in an area, or 1 count in a specific area, totaling that square footage. The incident it took place, and you can also continue to do some additional searches, such as, for example, we'll go empty this guy, and we can search on, let's just say we want to search on vacant lots. How many of our city facilities that are vacant lots have graffiti or have had graffiti in the past? And it'll highlight those areas for us. The other piece that's important, I think, to mention is the moniker. You can select the moniker classification. This is important for PD to use in case they want to prosecute or find out how many specific tags of a specific moniker. So they can go in here and do a search on the moniker. I will not do the moniker at this point. Or maybe I will. Let's see here. Again, we're pushing the envelope, right?
No,
Search by
let's
moniker.
not push. So we know that the police don't like us to publicly display the pictures that you have, but on
Correct.
any one of those dots, you can click on it, and your team has taken a picture of that graffiti that the police can use for apprehension purposes and crime solving, but we don't want to make that public. But we can make the rest of the data public, so people can see where the graffiti occurs and parse the database like you have. They
Right.
just can't see the actual graffiti, so.
Yes, to your point, Ken, so here's a moniker that said St. Jude, basically. And I know that this particular one, and the reason I want to show it is because it's important that what the work that we do, to your point, Ken, so if you click on it, for example, you go here and you zoom to it, you can actually zoom to the tag, and you can click on the photo. This is the tag that these guys responded to. And at the same time, here's the tag when they left the site. So this is impressive to me, and I hope that you know they've taken ownership of the program, and that's what drives these programs and these numbers to where they're at now, because there's ownership. and there's information that they're helping us capture in terms of the data to be able to make those data-driven decisions that we discussed earlier. Some additional, I know how we're doing on time, but some additional items that allow us is, so in this library area that we're at, if you look at the square footage total, everything within that screen is basically the square foot total of incidents that these guys have abated, and the number of tags that have happened within that within that library area. So this is important information. This goes back to the hotspots that I was talking about, the ability for us to be able to zoom out and identify what hotspots are within the city of Tempe, and we can concentrate our efforts in those areas. The last piece that I'll talk about is our chart here, which again allows us to get some square footage counts based on the size of the window. Everything within, or wait, here, let me see here. Let's go a little bit closer. So what it'll do is it'll capture everything within that window, and it'll chart out and give us the total square footage of that area that we've abated, and that's 11,915 square feet within this area. Same thing with incidents. How many incidents have occurred in this area? So again, these technological opportunities that Stephanie's group has put together has significantly improved the way we do business. And so with that, I have nothing more to show, and I hope you guys were impressed with that. If there are any questions, ideas, collaboration efforts, so we'll take them at this
Before
time.
you get to questions, let's congratulate Stephanie's group. This is just a great tool. Stephanie Dietrich and the GIS group have really contributed to all of our performance measures and helping us get a handle around them. I know, Isaac, you were going to say that you developed this one night at home. Yeah. But Stephanie's group contributed greatly. So questions about this and comments? Okay, I'm going to start calling names. Wait.
Hi. When you're aiming for one incident per 4 miles, are you taking square miles or linear miles? How do you measure?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is linear in nature. So currently we drive our existing arterials in the same exact way that we drove it in 2013, just so that the variables aren't changing. So yes, we are doing linear footage on arterial, and there are some collectors in that area.
I don't mean to ask this question to embarrass you, but I know that recently you had a graffiti situation that was in the news, and actually the work that you did contributed greatly to the police being able to arrest them. So maybe you want to talk about that. Don't show us any pictures, but just kind of talk about that.
No, that's good that you mentioned that. And Ken, you can relax now. I'm behind the screen, so I'm not showing anything else. That's specifically why I wrote these notes and made sure that I was clicking on the specific buttons, because there's a lot of explicit information that comes across. These two gentlemen have to put up with it on a daily basis. Obviously, we see any kind of explicit language out there. Most of you, the gentlemen that decided to do inappropriate things, cost us $9,000. And we fortunately have been able to go back and provide the data, provide the information, partner with our detectives. I know our field staff shared some information with our detectives from a management viewer standpoint and a supervisory standpoint. We all collectively came together and provided that information, and it'll be utilized not only for this effort, but we hope that PD and other divisions knows and understands the importance, knows and understands how important the data is, and the ability for us to make those decisions on how we either capture someone or we prosecute, and in this case, And in many other cases, whether it's through code compliance or any other, or parks, for example, because we visit our parks significantly, so we can go out and search a lot of this data to be able to tell our story. So, you know, if we have to, for example, find out how many tags within a particular park, we can do that. So yes, New Year's Eve for me was, I get the call from the PIO and says, hey, are you willing to do an interview? And I'm like, well, sure, it's going 15 minutes. Okay, fine. Well, I was here like 2 hours later for a 20-second blurb, and I'm like, okay, well, that's the way to end the year. But the good thing is that that's over, and we'll continue to do, work our efforts in terms of capturing the data.
Well, you know you're an international star now. Germany knows about it, Austria knows about it, so.
I thought I saw another hand up. Question? No? All right, well, let's give these gentlemen another hand of applause. And Wydale, I'm going to need some prompting. Our next scheduled Tempe Accelerates, if you could give me that date. And we aren't sure yet whether it will occur here or at the newly remodeled council chambers, but we will make sure that information is posted on our website. And, pardon me? February 20th, and it will still be at 2:30, I presume, and we will either do it here or in the council chambers, depending on the status of the council chambers update. So thank you all for participating. Have a good afternoon.
Send us your ideas and suggestions to tempeaccelerates@tempe.gov and visit us at tempe.gov/tempeaccelerates.